The story begins as a man bleeds out. He struggles just to breathe. He thinks back on how far they have all managed to come. A torrent of crimson laser beams rains down upon the battlefield. He desperately holds on to a fragile shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, they can defeat this enemy. But in a flash, an immense energy blade pierces him through the chest. He completely freezes. It takes him a crucial second to process that there is now a gaping hole torn through his body. He drops hard onto his knees, and only then does the reality of the situation hit him. It is an absolutely fatal blow. He collapses, face first, into the war-torn dirt. A final thought crystallizes in his fading mind. He thinks about how he will die right here, without having been able to do anything. His blurry eyes stare forward. Fixed on a single point, he watches the flying humanoid creature, the archenemy of mankind. Known as the Liquidator a long time ago, this unknown threat suddenly appeared and completely destroyed an entire continent in this world. A special group was formed to protect mankind from these monsters. The first member was a man who became famous because he had survived a giant meteorite without a single scratch, armed with nothing but a shield. Because of this incredible feat, people called him the world-protecting shield, Brian Miller. There was also a powerful sage who was said to have power equal to that of an entire military division. She is the great sage Bella Albright. In addition to them is a legendary archer who took down a high-level dragon with only a single shot. His name is Jacob Bloomfield, the divine archer. And then there is the strongest swordswoman to ever come into existence, the sword Saint Amy White. And then there were the others. A group designated as the support unit. Corpses from this were already scattered across the area. The man on the brink of death is a member of this unit. The foot soldier Gray Lee, who believes they are nothing more than sacrificial pawns. He watches the elite heroes fight and thinks about how they are truly on another level. He knew that the graduates of the World Union Academy were amazing. He just didn't expect that the gap in their power would be so impossibly wide. Those elites unleash a dazzling array of attacks that impact the Liquidator. It makes Gray feel useless because he questions if it even matters if the support units are there at all. Amy continues to engage the Liquidator directly in battle. She tries to stab her foe with a blur of impossibly fast movements. Gray grits his teeth. Witnessing this massive gap in power, even after all the support units had also trained hard, is a pain so intense that it forces tears from his eyes. The Liquidator skillfully evades every single blade, until a single sword edge finally scratches him. He is genuinely impressed that Amy was able to injure him, so now he becomes serious. He unleashes one single, blindingly fast strike. That one attack skillfully cuts the bodies of all the elite heroes in half. They all fall to the ground as blood gushes from their severed torsos. Gray's eyes stretch wide in pure shock. The Liquidator now shows its true skill after it is done playing around. Gray cannot believe that the enemy took them all out in just a single blow. He realizes now that it was only playing with them until this moment. It pains him to admit that there is absolutely no way that they can win this fight. He lies there in his own spreading pool of blood. But he is somehow still conscious. A lot of time has passed since his heart was pierced. So it is a complete puzzle to him why he is still alive. As his blood drips onto the ground, a voice speaks out to him. The voice tells him it has finally found him. The space before him shimmers like a small light. Eventually, a swirling portal fully materializes. A message is delivered to Gray, calling for him to come forth because he wields great power. Gray wakes up with a start. When he looks at his new surroundings, he sees he is in a dark place filled with several large stone structures. So he asks out loud where he is. It makes him think that this might be the afterlife, though it seems surprisingly barren. Aside from the strange architecture, he also notices someone sitting on a massive throne. This person gives off the impression of a god with its flowing black clothing, a helmet that looks like horns, a veil that covers its forehead, and a strange golden mark on its chest. It has a calm, stoic expression. The mysterious creature finally speaks to him, stating that he has not perished. It then informs him that his physical wounds have already been healed. This puts a new thought into Gray's mind. He asks the being if it was the one that healed him. The figure replies that it was not him, but that it was Gray's own power. That answer only makes Gray more confused. The mysterious creature explains that it cannot explain it to him because it is also unable to properly analyze Gray's power, but the creature guarantees him that his power is far stronger than what the liquidator possesses. He is told this is true only if he can control it properly. Gray asks him if this means that they can actually win the battle. The figure replies that it does not know and that he would not have high hopes. But it also believes that they ought to get rid of the liquidator, which is why it explains it will send him back. The being gestures and pushes Gray backward. Gray feels himself being sent through a shimmering portal so he can go back. Then, a bright blue light envelopes him completely. Blue energy pulses around Gray's chest. The voice declares that it shall lend him its power. Eventually, Gray wakes up. His body is lying right back where it fell on the bloodied ground. He grabs his nearby sword. A strange, dark energy begins to form around the blade. He is told from the lingering portal that this is, in fact, his own power. The mysterious creature tells him that its power is not something that is visible to the naked eye. Gray understands what this means. The liquidator then notices him. Without any hesitation, Gray slashes fiercely at the liquidator. It sees Gray's determined face. It cannot believe that there was still a strong person remaining. A deep scratch now marks its chest. Gray realizes that his attack actually did some damage. He moves to charge in again. He feels confident enough to say that his power is stronger than his enemies, but the liquidator advises him not to underestimate it. The very next thing Gray knows is pure shock. It takes him a process. What just happened? His entire body was instantly cut in half. Only his lower half remains standing as blood gushes out from it like a massive fountain. The liquidator commends him for pushing it to use its full power unexpectedly. A black mist erupts from his severed lower body and engulfs the area. From the mist, a new, hooded figure rises. It wears a mask over its face. Its new body is formed from a substance that looks like a black flame. It raises a gigantic black sword. The liquidator is confused by this sudden transformation. It stares as Gray's new form charges. The black flame on the left side of his new face peels away, and from underneath Gray's human eye can be recognized. The liquidator asks if he is truly human. Gray just glares at him. Then he attacks again. His sword meets the liquidator's powerful defense. He tries to break through its guard with all his might. The liquidator then notices something startling. Its defense is completely shattered, and the black sword slashes deep into its body. It asks him again if he is truly a human. Gray answers that he was wondering the exact same thing. The liquidator takes a step forward. It acknowledges that Gray's strength is nothing to joke about. Cannot believe that he is still alive. The creature begins breathing heavily. The liquidator approaches him and declares its intent to crush him over and over again until he is truly dead. But Gray attacks first. His sword slashes the monster, and its strange yellow blood splatters into the air. He calls the being a monster, but knows it is not about to be defeated here. A brilliant light surrounds its body as it builds up an incredible amount of power. It gestures, and a shimmering magic circle appears in the air. The liquidator announces that time is up. Gray holds onto his massive dark sword as he waits for his enemy's next move. He is suddenly surprised to see the sky turn to night, but he knows it does not matter. He flashes behind his opponent. He thinks of slicing the liquidator's neck, but his sword clangs against a protective barrier. The impact surprises him. The liquidator informs him that his struggles are futile, because within this plane of true dusk, nothing is capable of harming. So, it advises him to stop his useless resistance and instead take a look at the stars. Gray's eyes go wide. A single, impossibly bright star is reflected in his vision. It gets bigger and bigger, shining with overwhelming intensity in his eyes. The liquidator remarks that it is beautiful. The star burns like a new sun and then, suddenly, it falls from the sky. The impact is absolutely destructive. The shooting star carves a massive crater into the ground, and Gray is nowhere to be found. The liquidator expects that he will not be able to revive after being completely pulverized to dust, but then it is surprised when a golden portal begins to form in the air. Expanding into a large magic circle, a new voice speaks. Acknowledging the great amount of power that has been gathered, the voice expects that this will be enough to take Gray back. The liquidator instantly recognizes the entity and screams the name Kronos from the portal. Kronos asks the one who wields great power if he can hear him. And since he used all of his power, he has decided to send him back to the past. The liquidator screams and curses at Kronos. Kronos tells Gray that this is all that he can do for him. A magical clock face appears and its hands begin ticking backward as it reaches its final moment. Kronos tells him that he entrusts the fate of the world to him. With that, Gray wakes up. He finds himself lying on soft grass. He is confused about where he is. He sits up in the middle of a peaceful field. The sky is bright and the grass is a vibrant green. He then looks to his right and instantly recognizes the scenery. It is his hometown, Rinida village. He is puzzled because it should not be here. The village was completely destroyed 15 years ago. Then he recalls the final words he heard, how he would be sent back to the past. He cannot fathom that it actually happened. He props himself up on his hand but feels a sharp pain. He sees the fresh wound there. He remembers that around this time in his life he was being picked on by Wielder and the others. This time he tells himself that he will not be beaten by guys like them, but he knew back then that those guys were strong and he simply could not beat them. He sighs deeply and tells himself that defeating the liquidator was just a dream. He decides that he will think about how to deal with his bullies once he is a bit stronger, because he does not want to get hurt. But while walking through the nearby forest, his luck runs out. He runs right into them. The leader of the group is the biggest bully of them all, a boy named Wielder. The bully is with his two cronies. He tells Gray that he had been looking for him and that Gray caused him a lot of trouble by making him search. Gray remains cautious. Wielder throws a sword down in front of him and commands him to pick it up. Gray looks clueless because of this. Wielder tells him not to act dumb. He announces that he wants to have a mock battle. Gray refuses immediately, saying that his injury has not healed yet. He thanks him for the invitation but tells him that he cannot partake until his wound is better. Wielder replies that he has nothing to worry about, since the blade of the sword is blunt. Gray reasons that no matter how blunt the blade is, it is still a heavy lump of iron and it can still injure someone if it hits them in the wrong place. Wielder furiously yells at him to shut his mouth. He tells him that he does not have the right to say no, and if he does not like swords, he can just fight them without a weapon. Wielder immediately charges forward. Gray is caught completely off guard. He cannot believe that this guy wants to beat him up even when he is totally unarmed now. It does not seem like his intention was ever for a mock battle. He suddenly remembered what a military doctor had told him long before he was sent back in time. The doctor said that the reason his swordsmanship was not improving was because of an injury he had sustained as a child. Reflecting on it now, he could tell that this is the very moment where his life as a loser truly began. He sidesteps to easily evade Wielder's clumsy attack. And then it confuses him. Wielder clicks his tongue in annoyance while Gray is wondering if Wielder's strikes were always this slow. He ducks to avoid another wild swing. They engage in a dance-like motion where Wielder attacks furiously and Gray evades every blow with ease. He finally realizes that it is not because Wielder is slow. Wielder gets more and more annoyed that he cannot land a single hit. The sword whips by just an inch away from Gray's face, but he moves swiftly to evade and closes the gap between them. He now knows the correct answer. He has gotten faster. The other two young men are surprised by his nimble moves. They state that it seems like he is a completely different person now. Gray bends down to pick up the sword from the ground. He knew that he might not have the powerful body that he used to have, but he still has all the memories of the countless battles that he had fought. Wielder leaps into the air to slash down at him. Even though the attack is coming from behind, Gray skillfully deflects it by swinging the sword with his uninjured hand. Wielder gets hit by the flat of the blade and he lets out a small groan. Gray did not expect that this would be enough to throw him off his feet. It makes him question if it is okay for him to fight against such an amateur. But then he remembers that this guy is not someone who deserves his pity. He reasons that it was these pieces of trash who had tormented him endlessly just because he could not fight. But this time he declares it is not going to be the same anymore. He attacks and his precise strike makes Wielder let go of his sword completely. Wielder curses out loud seeing that he dropped his sword so easily. Gray can tell that he is worse than an amateur. He tells him that he probably was not ever trained on how to properly receive a blow from a sword. Gray steps directly in front of the stunned Wielder and tells him that there is nothing to worry about as he holds his own blunt sword. He quotes Wielder's earlier words back at him. He states that as long as the blade has been dulled, it is totally safe to beat someone with it. Wielder gets hit, he cannot believe his shoulder bleeds as blood splatters across his face. This sudden pain makes him cry out loud. He collapses onto his knees. Gray did not expect the blade was actually that effective, but when he checks it, he confirms that it is completely blunt. He realizes now that had this been a sharp sword, Wielder might have actually been killed. He glares down at the bully and continues his assault. Another strike hits Wielder squarely on the nose. He bleeds heavily as he falls hard onto his back. Gray decides to keep using the blunt edge. He towers over the whimpering Wielder and asks why he is screaming so much. He knows that Wielder has no right to complain since he was the one who told him that a blunt sword is safe. He grins devilishly down at him. Wielder starts to feel true fear. He frantically yells at his 3 friends to stop standing around and to go beat his ass. His 3 lackeys are scared because Gray became so strong all of a sudden. One of them suggests that they should all attack together from behind. They surround Gray completely. Gray asks them if they really want another round. Wielder orders his cronies to kill him. Gray calmly states that he was going to overlook this, but now he has changed his mind. The sounds of a fight disturb the quiet of the forest. The 4 bullies now kneel on the ground, completely bruised up with large bumps on their heads. They can barely open their swollen eyes. They meekly kneel with their weight on their heels, hands gently resting in their laps. Gray remembers how he had been so scared of these guys before. He asks them if they are from the Seria swordsmanship dojo. Wielder meekly replies that it was something like that. One of his lackeys adds that they felt like they have gotten strong enough, so they have not been going lately. In his head, Gray questions their definition of strong enough. He realizes that he should not expect much from the dojo itself. But regardless, he knows it will have its uses. He demands to be introduced to the dojo because it operates by referral only. Wielder begs him to ask someone else. He is terrified because if he tells his master that he lost, he cannot even imagine what they will say. Gray coldly swings his sword right in front of Wielder's face and suggests that they should just continue what they were doing naturally. Wielder becomes terrified. He scrambles to his feet and runs off while yelling that the dojo is that way. The others are surprised by how fast he runs. His 3 friends yell at him not to leave them behind. They soon enter the town. Wielder asks him why he wants to enter a dojo. Gray states that it is because the dojo has a recommendation slot for the academy. Wielder confirms that he heard something like that before. Gray responds that this is the reason he wants to go. One of the lackeys expresses that Gray is already strong enough without going to the academy. Gray thinks to himself how nice it would be if that was actually enough. But he knows that even the world's strongest lineup was no match for the Liquidator. And even when he used the power Kronos gave him, he could not even scratch the monster when it got serious. He has no idea how strong he needs to be to finally defeat that thing. But still, he holds on to some clues. He remembers that at the moment he clashed with the Liquidator, he felt for just a second that he was able to control that strange dark power. And what he had focused on in that moment was the swordsmanship that was taught to him by the Sword Saint. He thought that if he had spent more time training in swordsmanship in the same conditions as the Sword Saint, then the battle's outcome might have been different. He is aware that this was probably the reason why Kronos sent him here. They eventually arrive at the dojo and a woman overhears their story. She demands to confirm if the boys tried to pick on a civilian with the swordsmanship that they learned from her and then ended up getting their own asses handed to them instead. She clicks her tongue in disgust. This woman is the Seria swordsmanship dojo instructor, Seria. Wielder tries to reason with her that they were not picking on him because it was a mock battle. She responds by striking him so powerfully that he gets blasted away and smashes into the wall with a loud wham. The other 3 watch with their eyes wide in shock and tremble in absolute fear. Seria tells him she knows he is just making up excuses. She states that if he calls beating up an unarmed person a mock battle, then that would mean what she did just now was also a mock battle. She points her wooden sword at his eyes while telling him to leave and never return. She informs them that they can no longer call themselves students of this dojo from this point on. They all reply yes and scurry away in terror. She sits in front of Gray and apologizes. She acknowledges that her former students caused him a lot of trouble. He replies that there is no need to worry about it. She thanks him for his understanding and then brings up the topic of him wanting to get a recommendation to the academy. She wants to apologize for the trouble Wielder and his guys caused, but as much as she would like to write a letter of recommendation, She has to confirm his abilities first. She hands him a wooden sword. Gray accepts it. She tells him that he can have the first move and encourages him to come at her whenever he is ready. He immediately begins attacking her. The dojo instructor starts evaluating his every move. She can see that his swordsmanship is quite practical for his age. She can sense that it is as if he has been through countless battles before. She attacks and he deflects the blow perfectly. She understands that Wielder and the others are no match for him. She can tell that his style is mostly self-taught, but every so often his swordplay looks remarkably similar to what is taught at the academy. It makes her curious if someone had personally taught him. She can tell his swordsmanship is rough around the edges, but admits that he might have a great deal of talent. It is why she can say that he is like a diamond in the rough. She thinks that it is about time they wrap things up. She attacks. He moves to strike her. Their swords clash in a flurry of movement. They go at it again. A whirlwind of strikes and parries. She finds it strange that he is not even faltering and that Gray can definitely keep up with her. She just wanted to test his skills a little, but finds that her best is being drawn out by the fight. She questions the strange feeling that she is getting. It is fear. Gray makes her feel genuinely scared. He swings his sword so powerfully that it forces her to step back. She assumes that it was just a wild swing at that point. She believes she sees his weakness. She takes the chance to attack and decides to end their match right there. But suddenly, she is caught completely off guard, and is left utterly puzzled. Saria's wooden sword is now severed in two. This shocking result makes Gray pause as well. It is because he feels the exact same sensation as he did in that final battle. This feeling leads him to the immediate conclusion that he still has that incredible power. But it clearly comes with a painful drawback. He feels an immense agony course through his body. A pain so great that it makes him drop to his knees. Saria worriedly asks him what is wrong. He realizes that his own body failed to keep up with the incredible output of power. His legs tremble uncontrollably, but he forces himself to stand up and replies that he is okay. He barely manages to stay on his feet. He makes a critical mental note not to use that power carelessly again. He thinks about telling Saria what just happened. Saria, on the other hand, is completely puzzled by the way he just stares blankly at her. He decides he ought not to tell her because even if he did, she probably would not believe him. He decides instead to make up an excuse that he just got a little carried away. Deep inside, however, Saria knows that it is absolutely impossible to cut her training sword with a dull wooden one, and she is also aware that he knows this as well. The intense way he just looks at her makes him ask if something is wrong. Saria understands that he does not plan to talk about what truly just happened. She contemplates the situation and then brings up the original topic of what he wanted, which is a recommendation to the academy. He replies that he heard that she could give him one. She replies that she certainly can give him a recommendation to the kingdom's finest educational institution, the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship, but, she continues, she will not recommend that he go there. It is because she thinks that he is not suited for that particular place. That statement makes him feel a sting of disappointment. It confirms his deepest insecurity that he lacks real strength, especially since he could hardly do anything on his own. Except for that very last moment. Saria tells him that there is another place that he should aim for instead. And that place, she states, is the World Union Academy. Gray's eyes widen in absolute shock. What Saria means is that he should not just aim to be the kingdom's finest. He belongs among the world's absolute top institutions. This new possibility blows his mind. He is well aware that it was the place where the Sword Saint and all the other heroes came from. He asks if someone like him can really be accepted there. Surprisingly, she replies that it is impossible. She knows that he recognizes this truth himself. His body is nowhere near fit enough to properly wield a sword. She is aware that if it is just the Royal Academy, he might be able to fake it with his incredible skills, but his current physical state will not pass the scrutiny of the World Union Academy. She questions how he could acquire such incredible skill while having such a feeble body. He knows that she is right. He is well aware that everyone who graduates from that academy is a genuine monster. And with a body like his, he knows he cannot even hope to compete. He looks incredibly sad about this fact. Saria sees the expression on his face and asks him why he is giving up so easily. She points out that there are still 9 months remaining until the entrance exam. He reasons that it is only 9 months. She agrees that it might not be enough time, but she wants him to trust her completely. She then asks if he is ready to suffer over the 9 months. He replies honestly that he does not want to suffer, but that he has decided to do it anyway. He formally asks her to please take care of him over the next 9 months. She likes the conviction in our MC's answer with that declaration. Her entire demeanor changes, a shift which catches Gray completely off guard. With a devilish grin on her face, she tells him that this will be the start of his personal hell. The following days pass in a blur as he undergoes most rigorous training imaginable with her. He trains relentlessly day after day. Gray eats meals that are both delicious and highly questionable. He spars with her constantly and continually hones his fundamental swordsmanship. Our MC is utterly determined to make it to the entrance exam on time. 8 months later, the changes in him are incredibly noticeable. Saria can see that he has grown significantly more muscular, and because of this, she tells him that she has nothing left to teach him. She encourages him to now go out into the world with confidence. He is puzzled by this because there is still a full month remaining until the exam. She explains that taking an exam in a place that he is not used to is not going to be easy, which is why it is best for him to get there early. She then gives him a pouch of money for the trip and for a month's worth of food. He hesitates to take it from her. Also, he thinks that going a whole month early is far too soon. He takes it as if she is actively trying to chase him out of the village. She replies that he is just overthinking things. He brings up the recent topic of an ogre's nest that was found near the area. This new subject seems to surprise her. He adds that there are hardly any guards left in the village. She tries to play it cool and tells him that it has nothing to do with them. She assures him that help will come from the royal capital, so they have nothing to worry about. She urges him to just head to the exam without any worries. He can immediately tell that she is lying. In his previous life, he knew that no help would ever come to this village, and right before the village is eventually destroyed, he knows that his master will lose her life. There was news in his past life that she was killed when she went to fight and kill the ogre all alone. But, despite this knowledge, he simply replies that he understands what she wants him to do. He thanks her sincerely and informs her that he will be going. She lets out a small smirk and wishes him well on his exam. Later that night, skeletons are displayed gruesomely on a tree with sharp sticks piercing through their mouths. Saria shows up in the dark forest. From the information in the scout's report, she follows the path deep into the forest and finds a fresh trail of blood, and she sees that it leads right into an eerie, dark den. But she halts her steps when a familiar voice calls out to her, asking her where she is going. When she looks up into the trees, she sees Gray sitting calmly on a high branch. He smiles down at her and calls out her master. Saria is completely surprised to see him. She asks what he is doing in this dark forest when he is supposed to be on his way to the academy. He throws the exact same question back at her, since she said earlier that the ogre nests would be taken care of by the army from the royal capital. She tells him that the army could not come because of an urgent matter, so she decided that she would deal with it all by herself. She confidently assures him that she alone is enough to handle it, because she has already assessed the nest's strength from the detailed scout's report. She shares the information that the boss is a single elite ogre, and that the nest itself holds around 40 to 50 monsters in total. She admits that the sheer number of minions will be a tad tricky. Thinking about this, Gray knew that the boss was not that strong on its own. But an ogre's real strength lies in its tactical intelligence and its leadership over its minions. Gray was well aware of the incredible risk of being surrounded, and he knows that it is absolutely suicidal to fight this nest alone. And he is certain of one very important thing: if he lets his master go on her own, she will not make it out of there alive, and the entire village will be completely destroyed by the ogres. He had personally seen that dark future with his very own eyes. He expresses his firm desire to go with her. She refuses his offer and stubbornly insists that she alone will suffice. He tries a new tactic to convince her. He states that he does not want to miss this rare chance to gain some real combat experience. Then he asks her if she thinks that he is just going to get in her way. That comment makes her laugh because she knows he is well aware that he will not get in her way, especially since she could no longer even win against him in a simple mock battle. She reasons that nobody knows what might happen in a real fight, particularly when it is a monster's nest that has suddenly formed, and for a dangerous job like this one, it is best for him to wait until he has a bit more experience in real fights. He understood that she would not budge from her position, so he proposes a different idea instead. She looks intrigued. He tells her that he will fight her, knock her out completely cold, and then proceed to deal with the ogre nest all by himself. Looking at his determined stance, it does not seem like he is making a joke. The dojo instructor is speechless. She eventually gives up the argument, but she states that she has one single condition. No matter what happens, he must come back alive. He assures her he will do just that, and in turn wishes for her to live as well. Under the pale moonlight, they hide behind a large boulder while they spy on the colony of ogres. The surrounding terrain leaves no possible room for escape. It showed the monster's absolute confidence, building a nest in this kind of inescapable location. It also meant that Gray and Saria could not escape, and since they were now dealing with intelligent monsters, he decides to play it completely safe. Saria starts to observe the colony carefully. She does not see the boss anywhere, so she assumes that it is probably resting inside the main tent. They can only hope to thin down the enemy numbers before the boss finally comes out. She instructs Gray to take out any enemies he can see on his side while she takes care of the other. Gray agrees, and they both charge in. One of the ogres senses something is wrong, but before it can even process what is happening, Saria is already in its face, and she cleanly slashes its head from its body. Another ogre witnesses its comrade's head roll on the ground. It immediately lets out a guttural roar to communicate with the other ogres. And in no time at all, a horde of them comes charging forward. Meanwhile, on Gray's side, he is cutting down enemies one after another. He moves incredibly fast. It is the same for Saria. The battle turns into an absolute bloodbath. Eventually, the two group up again. A great number of ogre corpses now litter the ground. She praises his skill and even questions if this is really his first time in a real battle. But Gray quickly changes the topic and tells her to stay sharp. He warns her that they are just getting started internally. Gray feels that something is definitely off. He thinks the ogres are far too weak. If they were really this weak, he knew that his master could have easily handled them all by herself. That is why he figures the real danger is waiting inside the main tent. A pair of glowing red eyes stare out at him from the pitch black of the tent. Their gaze locks onto him, and it makes him feel incredibly uneasy. Without a moment's hesitation, he tells her that they have to leave this place now. He even urges her to run immediately. Saria asks him what is wrong. He looks completely panicked as he just shouts at her to go. She immediately picks up on his sudden fear, and they both start to run. But as they do, something massive jumps high over them. To their utter shock, a powerful ogre lands directly in front of them, blocking their only way out. Saria scoffs when she finally sees the elite ogre. She says that it is an honor that the boss came to greet them personally, but Gray tells her that this is not the boss. Then another, different ogre lets out a truly thunderous roar. The sound is so loud that instinctively covers her ears. Right after that, a massive swarm of ogres shows up behind it. They are whipped into a complete frenzy. She is completely stunned by the sight of them and asks what is going on. Behind the newly arrived horde stands a truly massive ogre. Gray states that it is something far stronger than just an elite. He identifies it as an ogre general. It is the true boss of this entire nest. With the elite ogre guarding the exit and a massive crowd of ogres blocking the front, they are completely trapped. The ogre general does not move from its spot, but its presence alone is absolutely terrifying. Once she hears that it is an ogre general, Saria instantly knows that they cannot possibly win this fight alone. She glances at the elite ogre. She then suggests that they try to take out the one in front of them and then try to escape. She launches a fierce attack, but the monster easily deflects her strike. She focuses and slashes again. She manages to leave a small scratch on its shoulder, but to her shock, the wound instantly starts healing right before her eyes. Gray tells her that it is completely useless. The general's powerful roar has boosted the strength and the healing ability of all the other ogres. That is why they suddenly feel unusually strong, and now she is even struggling to take down just one of them. Gray keeps fighting against the tide of monsters. He trusts her completely to cover his back. He says that she does not have to win, he just needs her to buy him some time. She gets worried and asks what he is possibly planning to do. He tells her that there is only one option left for them now. He intends to take down that monstrous ogre general bastard. And he absolutely means it. An ogre armed with a massive axe viciously knocks Gray's sword aside. RMC gets incredibly irritated every time they try to flank him. The ogre tries to knock his sword away, and then it raises its heavy axe to deliver a finishing strike. Right now, Gray is focused on completely wiping out every single enemy in front of him, but his opponent's powerful swing easily shatters his sword into pieces. He realizes his weapon cannot handle the sheer power of a boosted ogre. The creature swings at him again, and he leaps backward just in time to avoid the blow. He is glad that he has a spare weapon, but he knows it will not last for long either. Saria immediately realizes his dire situation and she tosses her own extra sword to him. He quickly thanks her for it. Now he has 2 swords, but he knows that this still is not enough to wipe them all out. So, he focuses only on the ogre general and the teeming horde that stands between them. He pulls out the second sword with one swift and fluid motion. He cuts a bloody path through the ogres that are in his way. One of them manages to scratch his cheek as it attacks. He blocks the heavy blow as the ogre tries to push him back with its massive axe. He clicks his tongue in annoyance, and then he presses forward even harder with his dual swords. More and more ogres are now swarming towards him. The ogre general's own weapon begins to emit a malevolent glow, then comes another one of its deafening roars. Gray visibly flinches from the sound. He watches as the ogres in front of him grow even stronger. They ferociously charge at him again. He realizes that the intelligent ogre general has completely figured out his plan. It roars once more. Gray now understands that this creature is undeniably smart. His swords clash against an ogre's heavy axe. He is pushed back by the force, but he wills himself to just keep moving. He rushes forward again, cutting down as many of the monsters as he possibly can. He knows he does not have the time to deal with all of them individually. Unexpectedly, an ogre tackles him from the side. It holds him firmly in place while another one raises its axe to strike him down. Gray manages to slash the clinging ogre across its neck. He finally realizes that they are trying to wear his swords down by throwing themselves at him. While he is dealing with the immediate threats, a large shadow suddenly looms over him. It is because an ogre has leaped into the air and is now ready to punch him. He blocks its powerful fist with his sword, but the impact is so great that it blasts him away. Gray coughs up blood. His entire body trembles uncontrollably. He is breathing heavily and one of his swords is now completely shattered. He is now down to his very last one. He cannot believe that he has to take on hordes of ogres and the powerful general with just a single sword because of his experience before he had regressed. He can tell with absolute certainty that there is no way he can possibly win. He then thinks, since that is the case, that he must tell his master to run while all the ogres are focused on him. She looks amused by this suggestion. She tells him she cannot do that. While she is fending off attacks, he desperately questions her if she plans to die here for nothing. He assures her that he will run right after she gets away, but she tells him that it is not that simple. She has a grim expression on her face until it settles into a resigned look when she admits that she cannot run anymore. Her leg has been deeply slashed and it is bleeding heavily. Gray's face turns pale when he sees it. Now he has truly run out of options. In his mind, he thinks about how he had gone back in time with one single goal, and that was to defeat the liquidators. He swings his sword with all his might, all while thinking that his life might actually end right here. His last sword finally shatters, but he still refuses to give up. He desperately tries to remember how that strange power felt back then. He thinks about tapping into it one more time, with one ultimate goal, and that is to defeat all of his enemies while the ogres ready themselves to attack him. He forces himself to remember. He tries with all his might to recall the sensation he had back then. Gray shuts his eyes and closes them tight as the last piece of his final sword flies right in front of him. He opens his eyes and they are now glowing with a malevolent red light. He has finally felt it again. He swings his new black shadow sword, delivering a devastatingly fatal strike to several ogres at once. A dark mist now covers part of his face and swirls around his new, dark blade. Saria is utterly confused by what is happening. Gray wears a grim look on his face, but when he looks back at her, he smiles and tells her that it is all right now. With just one powerful swing, he severs several heads from their bodies. The ogre general's sword begins to glow again, but in a split second, the massive creature is cut completely down. Saria notices the threat is gone, but while she is distracted, an ogre tries to sneak up on her from behind. She realizes that its attacks now feel incredibly weak. She comments that they used to give her such a hard time, but now she can slice through them with incredible ease. She says that without the general's powerful boost, they are absolutely nothing. It is already deep into the night when they have finally defeated the last of the ogres. Gray apologizes to her for breaking her sword. She tells him that she does not mind. especially since he has just saved her life. He hands what is left of the weapon back to her. She is just about to ask him about the strange and incredible power he just used, when Gray suddenly collapses. He falls face down onto the hard ground. Saria panics, and she desperately calls out his name. Gray's consciousness drifts into a dark, empty realm. He asks himself where he is. Everything is pitch black around him. A single, imposing door stands directly in front of him. He looks around, completely confused. Suddenly, black flames erupt and burn through the heavy chains shackling the door. He instantly recognizes it. It is the same terrifying power he had tapped into. He wonders if opening that door will grant him that power again. The thought alone makes him feel uneasy. Still, he takes a step toward it. But then, a truly terrifying presence materializes right behind him. The feeling makes him freeze, and he quickly steps back. His breathing grows fast and shaky. Deep down, he just knows the truth. If he opens that door in his current state, he will definitely die. Then, from out of the nowhere, a mysterious voice says he made a wise choice. And just like that, he jolts violently awake. He is gasping for air and completely drenched in sweat. Saria is startled by his sudden awakening. He is finally awake. He asks her where he is. Saria tells him that he is in the village infirmary, and she adds that he has been unconscious for 5 full days. She then admits that she was scared he might never wake up again. When Gray realizes he has been out for 5 days, he knows that he must have pushed his body too far. Saria says that the phrase pushed himself does not quite describe what he did. But setting that topic aside, she immediately checks if he is able to move his body. Gray tries to move, but he quickly realizes he cannot summon any strength in his right arm. He can move it if he puts in a great deal of effort, but the weakness worries him. What if he can no longer hold a sword? Even worse, he sees a strange, dark bruise on his arm. It looks like someone had splattered black ink all over his skin. Saria expected that he would not be able to move it. Gray wonders if she can even see the strange black mark. He then tells her that he cannot put any strength at all into his dominant arm. Just as she had thought, the injury will not heal properly anytime soon. She explains that all the bones in his right arm are completely shattered. He is shocked to hear this. It does not even hurt at all. She explains that they used a magic potion to treat his injuries. That news completely stuns him. Magic potions are incredibly expensive. She tells him not to worry. The village chief was the one who generously gave it to them. Gray cannot understand why the chief would give something so valuable to someone like him. She asks what he is talking about. She then reminds him that he is the village's hero. Gray looks completely clueless about this. Suddenly, another person bursts into the room. It is the village chief. Gray immediately thanks him for the incredibly expensive potion, but the chief says that they are the ones who should be thanking him. With powerful emotion in his voice, the chief explains that Gray had fought an ogre general. He says it was a monster that even the gathered troops from all the nearby towns could not scratch. That same kind of monster had come for their village. He clasps Gray's hand tightly. He says if Gray had not killed it, their village would have been completely wiped out. The chief explains that without him and Saria, there would be no potion, no infirmary, and no survivors. None of them would even be here talking right now. Gray replies that he is just exaggerating, but the village chief insists that he is not. He knows in his heart that he is speaking the truth. Gray thinks about this at some point. He agrees with the village chief's assessment. It is because, before he had regressed, this village was supposed to have been completely destroyed by the ogre's attack. The village chief tells him that if he still does not understand how important his actions were, he would gladly explain everything to him in great detail. He also mentions that he heard Gray was planning to take the academy entrance exam and asks if that is true. Gray's only response is a quiet, "Oh." Thoughts begin to race through his mind. He killed the ogre a week before the exam. He had been unconscious for 5 days. This now leaves him with just 2 days left to make it. His face turns pale when he remembers the journey to the academy. It is a 3-day walk. On a horse, it would only take a single day, but he does not have the money for that. He immediately asks the chief if he can please borrow a horse. The chief tells him he expected this. He has already prepared the very best horse in the village for him. With that particular horse, he will make it there in no time at all. Saria then jokes that if he had not woken up today, They would have carried him there while he was still fast asleep. She then opens the door to the outside. The bright sunlight makes Gray squint. He sees the waiting horse and a huge crowd of villagers gathered around it. They are holding banners, thanking him and wishing him good luck on his exam. Everyone wears bright smiles on their faces as they show him their heartfelt thanks. Many people come up to thank him personally. One man steps forward from the crowd. He hands Gray a small pouch. He asks the man what it is. The man explains it is something the whole village pitched in for. They all had heard that applying to the World Union Academy was extremely expensive. Gray is deeply touched by this incredible gesture. He smiles at them and sincerely thanks them all. Then, he jokes that it will be hard to come back if he fails the exam. Saria tells him not to worry. After all, he is the only person applying to the World Union Academy who has actually defeated a powerful ogre general. But Gray is still worried about his injured right arm. She reminds him that his left arm still works just fine. He nods in agreement. Saria tells him that is more than enough. She also says he does not need to use that strange power either. He argues that the exam might not be so easy. He knows passing it with just one arm does not sound simple. Saria immediately reassures him. She says that he will definitely stand out to the examiners. They will recognize his incredible strength. She is completely confident with her full belief behind him. She tells him he will definitely pass. He thanks her sincerely. He says that with her saying it like that, he now has no choice but to pass. In his past life, this village had been completely destroyed. But now it is still standing right here. Gray realizes this world is not the same one anymore. And this means that the future can indeed be changed. All of this is thanks to his power. And now, he is finally set to go. Eventually, he makes it just in time. He even thanks the incredible horse for getting him there so quickly. He looks straight ahead and sees a massive city that seems to float on a huge lake. He has finally arrived. This is the World Union Academy. In the grand arena, the host's voice echoes, announcing that they will now begin handing out the official exam tickets. Until the entire process is complete, all of the examinees are instructed to remain inside the central arena. A massive number of people are gathered, but only about 20 of them will actually pass. Someone in the crowd mentions that the number of successful candidates changes dramatically every single year. Sometimes 50 people make it through, but in other years only one single person is accepted. The host then calls Professor Ariel to the front of the stage. She walks in confidently and begins distributing the exam tickets right away. She instructs the assembled examinees to simply take the paper that will soon appear directly in front of them. She then dramatically snaps her fingers. A brilliant golden light instantly fills the entire arena. A single piece of paper then materializes in front of each examinee. Gray is designated as examinee number 513, and he is assigned to the fencing course. He notices that everyone else has received their tickets as well. The professor explains that they will only see their number and their assigned course. She then reassures them all that this is exactly how it is done every single year. She gives a small, knowing grin, and then informs them all that the World Union Academy does not judge its applicants based on their age, gender, nationality, or social status. That policy even includes their own names. None of those things matter at all to the Academy, she adds. Only those who actually pass the exam and earn the right to cross the bridge will ever be asked for their name. And even at that point, they can provide a fake one if they want. Gray is understandably confused. Even though he left his sword back at the inn, his paper still clearly says that he is in the fencing course. It makes him extremely curious about what kind of strange system they are using here. Then, Professor Ariel explains further, stating that they assign the courses based on a person's physical appearance. She says that if she got anyone's course wrong, they should immediately raise their hand. The examinees are all completely stunned by this. They cannot believe that she sorted all of them just by looking, especially with so many people gathered in the arena. Some of them guess that she had probably looked them all up beforehand. Others think that maybe she used some kind of mind-reading magic on them. But after a while, not a single person raises their hand. So, she confidently concludes that no one has been misassigned. Next, she announces that it is time for their exam schedules. She tells everyone to check their tickets once again. Gray's paper now says that he is scheduled for the very first day at 11 a.m. He does not like this one bit. He was desperately hoping for a little more time to let his injured arm recover. Professor Ariel then reminds them all that it is a one-shot practical exam. If they are late, They will be instantly disqualified. There will be no exceptions and no reschedules. Gray holds his injured arm. Thinking about how he still cannot use much strength in it, he silently prays that it will get at least a little bit better by tomorrow. The next day arrives. He is now in a serious pinch because his arm has not healed at all. He has no other choice but to take the difficult exam with his arm still in this weakened state. He is called to the entrance of the arena. He takes a deep breath and reminds himself not to be pessimistic about his situation. He evaluates his condition, knowing that his left arm is still fully functional and he can at least move his right arm to an extent. He decides to use the time he has left to watch the current examiner's moves and to try and find an opening. The examiner tells the next examinee to make the first move. The hopeful student charges ferociously at the examiner. His swings are heavy and powerful, but the examiner just casually sidesteps to evade them. The examinee yells out that he is not done yet. He grips his massive sword with both of his hands and swings it with all his might. The examiner easily blocks the powerful attack using just one hand. Seeing this happen, the examinee's spirit is completely crushed. The professor then charges at him and blasts him away with just a single powerful swing. The poor guy falls onto his back and the examiner calmly concludes his exam. The student is then instructed to retrieve his weapon and to exit the venue. A small, bitter smile forms on Gray's face as he watches. He already knew it. He is totally done for. There is no way in hell he can possibly win this. Not long after, the examiner calls his number. As he walks toward the testing area, he cannot believe that he has to fight someone who has just taken down a man twice his size using only a single arm. Gray is instructed to make the first move. He feels like he does not even have a chance, but he decides that he has to do whatever he can. He bravely charges forward. He recalls what Saria had taught him, that a sword is not swung with just your arms, but that he needed to channel the power generated by his entire body and direct it through his arms even if his right arm is still powerless. He thinks of driving all of that force through his other muscles. He swings his sword, and the examiner ducks to evade it. Gray is feeling extremely nervous since he cannot fight the way he usually does. He thought that if swinging a sword without any arm strength was that easy, no one would ever bother to train their bodies in the first place. The examiner then counterattacks. That is when Gray gets really confused. It is because the instructor's sword seems to be moving incredibly slow, and he is easily able to block it. He can tell that the examiner has an insane amount of raw power, but he thinks that his speed and his technique do not even come close to his master's. He believes that if he just relies on the pure swordsmanship that he learned from her, he might just be able to make up for the significant difference in his arm strength. Gray's eyes turn sharp with new determination, and he thinks that if this is the case, he will move accordingly. He becomes absolutely certain that the examiner is actually quite slow, and is not nearly as strong as he had originally thought. He remembers his master's parting words, how she told him that he would definitely pass. Their swords clash in a shower of sparks, and this time he is able to overpower the examiner. It is in this moment that he starts to have real faith that he can actually do this. Their intense sword fight continues. Although Gray had already seen through the examiner's basic swordsmanship, he charges at him again. The professor expertly evades the attack. This leads Gray to think that the difference in their raw power is just too great, and that he cannot seem to break his solid form. It makes him realize that it is not going to be easy to win with just one hand. After all, with that said, as they continue to spar, he notices that the examiner's movements are becoming much rougher. While Gray has a risky move in mind, he finally finds the right timing he has been waiting for, and he baits the examiner to come directly at him. The examiner lunges forward to attack, and that is exactly what Gray wanted him to do. He wanted the examiner to make a wide, open swing. He strategically shifts all of his weight onto his right foot, knowing that this action would leave a clear opening. He also knew that most of his opponents would go for a big, obvious swing. Unexpectedly, Gray is now standing directly behind the examiner. His opponent is caught completely off guard. RMC knows that no matter how great the difference in their raw power is, if he can just get behind him, then he will be able to defeat him. But they are suddenly ordered to halt. The very tip of Gray's sword is now only an inch away from the examiner's back. Gray wonders if the match is really over. He thinks it is a bit too early to stop now. Another examiner's voice announces that the time limit for his test has now been reached. Gray's eyes widen as the official result is announced. It is a draw. Gray is absolutely sure now that he will not make it. His firm grip on his sword loosens, as if his body has simply given up all hope. He leaves the arena feeling completely down because he had given his absolute all just to pass. He also knows that if he cannot even win against this one examiner, things will be extremely difficult for him in the future. He expects that his arm will finally be healed by next year, so he decides he will just have to take the exam again. Then before he leaves, he glances at the academy one last time and he expresses a quiet thank you. 1 week later, in the World Union Academy's meeting room 53, the head of the academy asks the assembled professors for their thoughts on the candidates now that they have finished all of their exams. One of them immediately expresses that he is completely exhausted. An older professor then states that this method of everyone observing together is rather inefficient. He suggests that they should divide the workload for next year. Another professor defends the current system, stating that they cannot afford to overlook a real talent simply for the sake of making things easier for themselves. The head of the academy sighs and points out that he had asked to hear their thoughts on the examinees, not on the examination system itself. He starts the review with the examinees from the swordsmanship course. He asks them who has passed. They all watch the screens as one of the professors states that, as always, those who had actually beaten their examiners have passed. He says that the rest will be judged based on the quality they showed and how they held out during the strict 15-minute time limit. He then asks the other swordsmanship course instructors what they thought. One of the professors replies that other than those who beat the examiner, candidates number 5, 217, and 753 have stood out. Another person suggests that they should just keep it at that, since even if they joined, they would not be able to keep up in class. The professor agrees with this assessment and then asks if anyone thinks otherwise. The meeting continues on. Eventually, the head concludes that they have now confirmed the successful candidates for the swordsmanship course. But then, someone asks about candidate number 513. The head glances at the speaker. It is Professor Ariel. She asks them what they all think about candidate 513. They all watch the screen again. One professor calls 513 a little guy. When they watch his test, it certainly looks like he is going to win. But one of them states that if he has to rely on setting up traps just to beat an examiner, things will be difficult for him in the future. They observe that his technique was good, but that his strength was clearly lacking, and it felt like he was completely outmatched from the very start. The brown-haired professor with a mustache expresses that he is not good enough. They all quickly agree with this. Professor Ariel is absolutely speechless. She cannot believe that so many of them have watched the test, and yet not a single one of them noticed the truth. She thinks to herself that if everyone here is this blind, then having everyone observe together truly is a complete waste of time. The very next day, Gray is holding his exam ticket. The final results for the swordsmanship course will finally be announced. Only 6 people have passed the rigorous test. Everyone in the crowd waits nervously. The first to be called is candidate number 5. As their number is called, their exam ticket bursts into bright flames. Then comes candidate 217. Next are numbers 432 and 615. Then 753 and 925 are called. That is it. Gray looks completely crushed when his number is not called. The successful candidates are then told to cross the bridge and to finish their enrollment by the end of the day. Gray looks downcast while others all around him cheer for the successful passers. He wears a completely heartbroken look on his face after failing the test. Then comes another, completely unexpected announcement. It is for the Divine Ice special admission. Just a few seconds later, Gray's number is called, and his exam ticket bursts into brilliant blue flames. Everyone around him is absolutely shocked. Gray stands completely frozen, utterly confused. People in the crowd immediately start sneering. It is Gray's first time even hearing about this special admission. Some of them say the Academy must have cheated. They claim the World Union Academy has sunk to a new low. Gray overhears their comments. He is confused since he has no special connections. He wonders if his master had done something, but he had not heard anything about it. An old man in the crowd then scolds them for talking like that about the Divine Eye admission. He tells them it is a prestigious category that has produced incredible heroes for centuries. The crowd does not buy his explanation. They say that it was only respected a long time ago. They point out the more recent Divine Eye picks, Amy White, Bella Albright, and Jacob Bloomfield, and they call them all complete failures. Even the current candidates had heard those stories, but Gray knows much better. Those 3 heroes were a part of the main force that had fought bravely against the dreaded Liquidator. And now his own name will stand beside theirs. An announcement echoes across the Academy grounds, stating that the entrance ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. Once all the students have finished changing, they are instructed to gather in the plaza in front of the main office. Their new uniforms have a stylish black path with the academy symbol elegantly engraved upon it. RMC looks quite dashing in his new attire. Some of the students have arrived early at the designated plaza, but they are not sure if it is the right place, since nothing at all has been set up for a ceremony yet. A man then comes running toward them and apologizes profusely for the delay. Explaining that there has been a bit of a mix-up, he asks the students to please step back a little so he can place the grand stairs in that exact spot. The students move back and ask him if where they are now standing is okay. The man says that it is perfect. Then, to their surprise, he kneels down to the ground. The students are all completely confused by this. He then touches the ground and a massive magic circle appears beneath him. The ground itself then begins to shift and move. The students' jaws all drop. They are completely shocked to see a full structure, complete with stairs and a stage, rise right up in front of them. The man apologizes again for the delay and tells them all that they can now sit wherever they like. The students are clearly amazed by this spectacle. They realize that it was an act of teleportation magic, but they still cannot believe that something so massive could be teleported like that. Gray sits down, thinking that the school probably wanted the ceremony to be held in a place where the magnificent main building could be seen in the background. To him, it feels like an incredibly extravagant use of teleportation magic. He definitely looks excited after he starts to realize just how powerful the World Union Academy truly is. The other students around him soon notice that there are far too many seats. Only 30 students were actually accepted, so it seems completely unnecessary to have that many chairs set up. The girl Gray is talking to is surprised that he does not know the reason why Gray apologizes, explaining that aside from his training, he has not really studied much else. The girl then kindly offers to explain. She says that, as the name of the academy suggests, it gathers the absolute top students from all around the world. She then points to something high up in the sky. Gray is shocked to see a flotilla of aircraft and even dragons flying above them. He asks her what all of those are. Gray is completely surprised to see the famous magic airship, the Strata Queen. He had once boarded it before when he had joined the Liquidator Subjugation Squad. It is said to be one of the biggest and most advanced airships in the entire world. He cannot believe that they are using it just for a simple entrance ceremony. The World Union Academy is definitely exceeding all of Gray's wildest expectations. The massive airship lands and even more students get off of it now. Everyone is finally present. The grand entrance ceremony can finally begin. Eventually, the headmaster's long speech has ended. Gray looks completely bored. In his mind, he thinks that this entrance ceremony is not that much different from a normal one. The next part of the program is the greetings from the top students of each of the respective courses. Leon Hart, the top student of the swordsmanship course, is then called to the front while he gets up from his seat and makes his way onto the stage. The other students begin to gossip about him. They have heard that he had defeated his examiner in an instant during the entrance exam. Some of them even say that he is as good as any of the current professors when it comes to swordsmanship. This impressive student is Leon Hart. Up he is. Gray watches him intently before Leon Hart reaches the microphone. He confirms with the headmaster if he is allowed to speak freely. They reply that he is, and he politely thanks them. Then he states that he has one single complaint that he would like to make to the academy. Before he continues on that topic, he greets his fellow students, all of those who have been admitted into the academy through what he calls a proper way. He states that it is a great honor to be admitted to this academy with the rest of them. He tells them all that they should strive to graduate as individuals who are capable of making meaningful contributions to the world. So, he encourages them to all work hard together. He adds that he is looking forward to the days when they can all aim high together as students of the prestigious World Union Academy. But, he says with a sneer, there is someone among them who does not deserve to be there. He then asks Professor Ariel if he is correct. This direct question catches her completely off guard. She states that all of the students there have passed the Academy's rigorous exams. And though they may not all be as strong as him, she does not think that it is a wise idea to exclude them. She then asks him why he is asking her such a question. Leon Hart glares directly at her. He states that he is not talking about those who have been admitted by passing their exams properly. He states that what he truly meant was the student that she had backdoored into her divine eye special admission. He then dares the student who was specially admitted to show himself. He orders that person to immediately return their uniform and to leave the academy right now. A palpable tension instantly fills the entire arena. Gray cannot understand why Leonhardt is being so incredibly hostile. He then remembers that Leonhardt had been sitting right next to him the entire time. He is relieved that the hostile student does not know his face. He is thinking that he will not get caught up in this mess if he just does not step forward. Professor Ariel acknowledges that the new students for this year are quite lively. Leonhardt feels like no one is taking him seriously. He calls her out on this and tells her to stop letting students into the academy through the back door. She does not say much at first. Then, in the blink of an eye, she leans in close and whispers in his ear. She asks him if he really thinks that he is stronger than that particular kid. Her sudden move is so unexpected that it shocks the entire arena. Leonhardt is completely caught off guard by this. He grits his teeth. He says that yes, he does. He then asks her if she is trying to prove him wrong. Professor Ariel likes his confident attitude, so she suggests a bet. That proposal catches his interest. She then bets both her own job and the kid's admission on the outcome. Gray is confused by everything that is happening. Leonhardt turns to Professor Ariel. He asks if she is seriously planning to make him fight the special admission kid. Professor Ariel calmly replies. She states she would never do such a boorish thing. She adds a shocking declaration. She explains that if Gray goes all out, Leonhardt will end up dead as a responsible educator. She declares that she must not put her students' lives at risk. Leonhardt's veins practically pop on his temple from pure anger. He feels deeply insulted by her casual remark. But she simply states that she is only speaking the facts instead. She suggests a much safer option. They will make their bet about monsters instead. She even remarks that Leonhardt is much better at fighting monsters than people anyway. He glares at her but admits that she is well informed. He then asks what the bet is exactly. She explains the terms, noting that it is very simple. Each of them must kill the monsters that she picks as their targets. For each round they complete, the target monster will get stronger. Whoever is the first one unable to defeat their monster loses the bet entirely. If Gray loses, Professor Ariel will retire from her position. All special admission students will be immediately expelled. But if Leonhardt loses, he will have to do whatever she says. She then asks him if he is in. Leonhardt wants to know what kind of monsters they will be facing. He is confident in his skills. But he does not want to get caught up in some kind of weird setup. After thinking for only a moment, she reveals the very first target. It is an ogre general. She then teasingly asks him if that is too easy for him. The entire class is completely stunned by this declaration, but Gray does not react. Instead, he is only curious why she chose that specific monster. Leonhardt, on the other hand, is absolutely furious. He shouts that an ogre general is not something a person can possibly defeat alone. Professor Ariel clarifies her statement. She tells him they do not have to do it immediately. She explains that they will be given a full year. Leonhardt completely snaps. He says that if someone could solo a disaster-level monster with just a year of training, then people would not be suffering in the first place. He yells at her to pick something more realistic. While trying to catch his breath, he pauses. He then realizes her true plan. He believes she is purposely choosing an impossible monster so that the bet will end with no clear winner. With new confidence, he declares that he is not going to play along with her games. Ariel just smirks. She adds one final, crucial condition to the bet. If the match ends in a draw, then Leonhardt will be considered the winner. Basically, this means that if Gray fails to defeat the ogre general, she will be fired and all the special admission students will be expelled from the academy. She asks him what he thinks about that new rule. He looks at her as if she is crazy. He cannot shake the powerful feeling that the bet is now completely stacked against him. She takes his silence as an agreement. Just to be clear, Leonhardt adds a condition of his own. It had better not be a weakened ogre general or anything like that. She calmly replies with a simple, of course. Then, with a dramatic flick of her hand, a feather pen materializes out of thin air. She tells him that all the terms have already been written down inside a magic contract, and that he can sign it if he has no further objections. He reads the magical contract. He decides to go through with it. Still, he has to ask her if she really believes that this kid can actually win. Her answer is vague. She just says, "Who knows?" She then quietly returns to her seat. The other professors whisper among themselves. They wonder what is wrong with her. Some of them think she is just using this bet as an excuse to retire. It does not seem too far-fetched as she is past her prime. After all, Gray has no choice in the matter. The bet is now official, but something bugs him about the terms. He wonders why she included the one he defeated before he was even enrolled, when she said the time frame was for a full year. She then watches RMC in total silence. Gray suddenly realizes that the bet was a sealed deal the very moment it started. As he stares at her, she puts a single finger to her lips, silently telling him to stay quiet. It is in that moment that Gray knows for sure she definitely plays dirty. Eventually, the opening ceremony ends, and everyone goes to their assigned classes. The very first subject is basic magic. It is surprising to some that the lecture starts immediately on the very first day. But as students of this academy, they have to understand that not a single day can be wasted. The professor begins the lesson by teaching them all how to utilize magic. It is the most basic topic. He explains that the body holds a hidden and invisible energy that is called ether by guiding it through the body's own magic circuits. He continues writing and explaining everything on the board. Gray is a student in this very class. At first, he was afraid he would not be able to keep up. But it turns out he already knew this entire lesson from his time in boot camp. So far, so good, but there is still one big problem. Out of all the possible classes, he has ended up in the very same one as Leonhardt. He silently prays that Leonhardt will not find out that he is the divine special admission student. The professor suddenly notices Gray looking bored and uninterested. He scolds him for already looking away. Just 5 minutes into the lecture, Gray is shocked. He cannot believe he got caught with just a single glance, especially when he is seated all the way in the back. He quickly apologizes for his lack of focus. The professor then challenges him. He says that if Gray is so confident, then he should show it to the rest of the class. He even taunts him by saying he expects that Gray can at least use basic magic. Gray politely explains that since they are in the swordsmanship course, he thought it would be fine if they could not use magic. The professor replies that even if you mainly use a sword in combat, it is still vital to understand the basics of magic at the very least in order to coordinate with mages. He says that knowing basic spells and understanding how they feel is absolutely essential. Gray cannot believe the professor is giving the exact same explanation that he had already heard in boot camp. He wonders if the spell they will be learning is also going to be the same. So, he asks if they are going to learn the spell Ether Bullet. The professor raises an eyebrow. He asks if Gray can already use it. Gray confirms that he can. He feels relieved. At least all of that painful training at boot camp had not been a total waste. Seeing this as an opportunity, the professor decides to set up a match right there on the spot. He knew that Leonhardt, whom he calls Leon, can also use Ether Bullet. Leonhardt proudly confirms it. He then adds that even before he had entered the academy, he had trained in both swordsmanship and magic. In his opinion, this makes it very risky for another student to fight him seriously, but the professor is not worried at all. He says that even if there is a big skill gap, they are only using ether bullets. It is not like anyone is going to die. And he does not plan on asking Leonhardt to hold back his power either. Then the professor drops a massive bomb. He reveals that Gray is this year's Divine I student. Everyone in the entire class immediately turns to stare at Gray. He knows right away that he is in big trouble now. The professor grins like a devil as he exposes everything. Leonhardt responds coldly to the news. He declares he will now show Gray how things really work and what kind of place this academy truly is. Leonhardt glares at Gray and tells him to step forward. They now stand face to face in the middle of the room. The professor explains that once he gives the signal, they will both fire their ether bullets at their opponent. Gray had only spent a few days training in magic during his time in boot camp. And even though the professor had said it would not be fatal, Gray knows he probably will not walk away from this without getting seriously hurt. The professor then gives the signal for them to begin. Leonhardt is completely set on proving just how much stronger he is. Gray knows that he has no choice. He decides he has to just go for it. Leonhardt releases a small, baby blue orb of pure light. But when Gray casts his own spell, a massive, intensely glowing blue orb of raw energy forms in front of him. The next moment leaves everyone in the entire room completely stunned. With their faces completely frozen in shock, even our MC is in absolute disbelief. Gray's ether bullet overpowers Leonhardt's spell with ease. This shocking development makes Leonhardt shriek in terror. The professor immediately intervenes. He forms a protective barrier in front of Leonhardt to try and save him. He is relieved that he has managed to protect his student, but to their complete surprise, the barrier shatters instantly. It completely breaks apart and sends a massive blast of force that throws Leonhardt backward. The attack emits a powerful gust of wind and a blinding light. The other students in the room are affected by it as well. Leonhardt lets out a loud, pained scream as he crashes hard onto the floor. The professor immediately rushes to his side and asks if he is all right. Leonhardt slowly stands up and confirms that he is fine. The professor lets out a deep sigh of relief. He then looks back at Gray. He realizes that if the barrier had not at least weakened some of the impact, Leonhardt could have easily died. And even more shocking, he knows that none of the professors could possibly produce an ether bullet that is anywhere near as strong as that. He turns back to Gray. He asks him, "What did you just do?" Gray is equally confused by the result. Leonhardt's ether bullet felt incredibly weak. It did not even seem like it was the same spell that he had used. This makes him wonder, was the ether bullet he had learned during his time in the subjugation squad somehow different from the one they teach at the academy? He asks the professor if maybe he had used the wrong spell. The professor replies, no, it was definitely an ether bullet, but he then adds that the quality of Gray's spell was on a completely different level. He explains that it was not made from regular ether, but from something he calls super compressed ether. The other students in the class had never even heard of such a thing before. The professor admits that it is a kind of power even the Academy's own professors, struggle to control. Yet somehow, Gray had not only produced it, he had also expertly shaped it into a spell. He states that there is not another person in the entire Academy who can possibly pull that off. The other students immediately begin to whisper amongst themselves. It is the first time any of them had ever seen an ether bullet that powerful. Some of them now believe that the Divine Eye admission program exists for this exact reason. Others begin to say that Gray should have been placed in the magic course from the very beginning, instead of being specially admitted into the swordsmanship course. But in Gray's mind, something does not feel quite right. All the spells that he had learned back at the subjugation squad's boot camp were just like that. And even among his own group, he was not considered particularly talented. He asks the professor if he is just joking because with enough practice, he thinks that anyone should be able to do something like that. The professor immediately bursts out into a fit of laughter. Gray is now even more confused, especially when the professor begins to laugh even louder. Then, completely out of the nowhere, the professor grabs Gray by his shoulders, steps directly into his personal space, and tells him to transfer to the magic course. He even offers to personally vouch for him. According to him, Gray is far more gifted in magic than he is in swordsmanship. Gray politely declines the offer. He explains that he has always been told that he is not very good at magic. The professor looks at him like that is the most hilarious joke he has ever heard. He cannot believe that Gray, someone who understands the ether compression technique well enough to produce supercompressed ether, truly thinks that he lacks any talent in magic. He calls Gray a once-in-a-generation genius, a prodigy that even this academy would be proud to have. He adds that whoever told Gray he had no magical talent clearly had no idea what they were talking about. He then asks Gray once more if he is really sure that he does not want to switch over to the magic course. This particular professor is known for rarely ever handing out compliments, so the other students are all completely stunned. They cannot believe that he is praising someone this much. The professor continues to pressure Gray, saying that if someone like him does not study magic, it would be a huge loss for the entire world. And he even goes as far as to call it a crime against magic itself. Gray just lets out a nervous laugh. But then something in his memory clicks. He suddenly remembers where he has actually heard about the ether compression technique before. In his previous life, back at boot camp, someone had once explained to him that in the old days, people did not even know that a life force called OD even existed. Because of this, casting proper magic was incredibly difficult. They had to continuously compress the ether within their bodies and just hope that a tiny bit of it would accidentally mix with the OD just to create a usable spell. A woman with baby blue hair and golden eyes had once called that entire process completely laughable. Now, in the present, Gray asks the professor if he has ever heard of this OD. The professor looks completely confused by the question. His reaction immediately confirms it for Gray. This world still does not know about the existence of OD. Gray realizes something truly massive. He understands that what he had learned back in the subjugation squad was actually knowledge from the future, and he knows that he must be incredibly careful about who he tells this information to. The professor then brings the topic back to the main point and asks Gray one last time if he is willing to transfer to the magic course. Gray gives a proper bow and sincerely apologizes. He explains that he simply loves swords, and as grateful as he is for the professor's generous offer, he has to decline it. The professor accepts his decision. He tells Gray that if he ever changes his mind, he is always welcome to come to him anytime. Gray thanks him sincerely. The professor then tells Gray that he can go back to his seat. He also adds that from this point on, he will not scold Gray for looking bored during his class, or even for leaving early if he wants. It is because he now knows that this particular lecture is far too basic for someone like Gray. The other students in the room are completely impressed. They cannot believe that Professor Carlos thinks so highly of Gray. Meanwhile, Leonhardt watches Gray's every move. He clutches at his chest and his cheeks turn a slight shade of pink. He looks at Gray with pure admiration in his eyes. He even calls him Lord Gray under his breath. Gray feels a sudden chill run down his spine. He finds the whole thing a little creepy. Later that day, Gray receives a mysterious letter from Professor Ariel. She asks him to please come to her office after his last class. The sudden summons catches him completely off guard. He wonders if it has something to do with Professor Carlos. He guesses that she might also be planning to recommend that he switches to the magic course as well. When he reaches her office, he stands directly in front of the door, but before he can even knock, Professor Ariel's voice calls out from inside, telling him that the door is not locked. He walks in, but he is then suddenly attacked from the side. He quickly draws his own sword and manages to block the incoming attack with incredible ease. The young girl who has just struck at him is completely stunned. Gray realizes that he had reacted purely on his own battle instincts, but he still wants to know why she had attacked him in the first place. He then gets a good look at her face and is completely shocked. She looks incredibly familiar, just like someone that he has seen before.